at the Belle Chase Council Chambers. Secretary, call the roll. The machine is open for roll call. Let the record reflect that all three council members as sitting as the audit committee are present. And we'll ask Mr. Brown to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Something challenging for you. We do that at the council meeting.
Fair enough.
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. But if you'd like to volunteer. Okay, we'll move to item number 2.
Recommendation and consideration of action to suspend the Assistant Internal Auditor.
Okay, Mr. Duke. Speaking to the mic, please.
6 months of my tenure as the Chief Internal Auditor, I would, and based upon Mr. Fontenot's behavior during that period of time, as well as his work product, I would like to suggest to the council that we suspend Mr. Fontenot for 5 days, 5 working days without pay.
Okay. That's all your comments? Mr. Fontenot, if you have comments you want to take
You
them
want
up?
me to get into details? The detail, the work product has been explained in the evaluation that I did on Mr. Fontenot. It's pretty clear that he does not have the experience and the expertise to do internal auditing work. He came on board here, I believe in 2015, and at that point in time, even though he met the minimum qualifications of his job description, he did not meet the essential responsibilities and essential functions of the job. However, he was, given the position. He functioned during that time without any supervision from anyone. However, the job description is a professional position, and that being a professional position, even though you're not supervised by anybody, you have the obligation to conduct yourself in a professional manner and get the education that is needed if you don't have it to fulfill the job. Show the initiative if you don't have the qualification. If you don't have a feel for what's going on, there's a lot of sources out there, UNO, Southern University, Dillard's, Delgado, where you can go and get some information on how to do the internal audit function. And Mr. Fontenot did not do that. That showed that initiative or motivation. He allowed himself just to pretty much sit in the office, and he expected someone to guide him in the function of internal auditing, and the people that hired him didn't have any internal auditing experience either, so they couldn't guide him. The chief internal auditor couldn't guide him. The appointing authority and the audit committee couldn't guide him. So that being said, if you're a professional as stated in the job description and you don't have any guidance, what you do is you go out and you get your own guidance and you try to do the job based on what you can find out there. There's tons of information on internal auditing website and whatnot that you can get in order to at least scratch the surface and provide the audit committee and management with some form of work that is internal auditing work.
All right. That concludes your remarks.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Fontenot, do you have the option of being in public session or going to executive session to have your comments heard? What is your choice?
What's my difference if I do executive?
It's your choice, whatever you prefer.
All right, well, I can speak on it right now.
Okay. Is your mic on? It's on now?
Tested, yeah. Oh, well, you know what, I understand Mr. Duke's concerns, and I understand some of the things that he's saying. Considering how I was hired and how I came into this job, what I've tried to do was keep a professional manner. So whatever it was that was asked of me by the committee, I did. As far as taking initiative, I stated in the past that I needed help. I mean, Councilman Roussel, you did give me some guidance when you sent me to the training for the 3 days, and that was one thing. But in the past, I did not know where to go. So when the September the 27th, I think it was the 14th, I asked for help. That's because I had no guidance. So I was well aware that I did not know the direction I wanted to go in with the auditing department, because I've stated to Mr. Duke before, I have not had any experience in this, and I was not trained properly. So I figured when Mr. Duke was coming in, not only was he going to take the lead as a supervisor, but he was going to help me to get to that place. Now, I've never written up an audit report, and I felt like it's unfair that in the midst of me trying to do this, I feel like no matter what I do at this point, he's going to say it's unacceptable. I can't write on Mr. Duke's level. He got 30 years experience in this. I basically only have 6 months. And me being suspended and leaving, that's not helping the cause in any kind of manner. Because if I'm gone, then how am I ever learn if I'm never around? So, well, as I understand what Mr. Duke's saying, I just think that it's unfair.
Conclude your comments.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any further comments or any comments from the board? So it's your recommendation, Mr. Duke, to do a 5-day suspension without pay at this time? Is any action on this?
I'll make a motion.
In a resolution accepting the recommendation of the internal auditor to suspend Travis Fontenot, assistant internal auditor, without pay for 5 days beginning Friday, April 13, 2018, otherwise provide with respect thereto, offered by Councilmember Juneau. Is there a second?
Could I revert back to comments?
Yeah, I'll second for the purposes of discussion.
Okay. As everyone
Wait,
knows,
let me give you on the mic.
as everyone knows that, I could speak, I think, without the mic. As everyone know that I'm not in a close proximity of working with the assistant internal auditor. You know, my office is housed in the Port South area. You know, unlike my two counterparts that work immediately within close proximity of the auditor's office. So they would have more knowledge of day-to-day operation and activities and what's going on in the auditor's office. In a previous conversation that I had with Mr. Duke, my comment after he shared his concern to me of Mr. Fontenot, my immediate comment to him was, this is your call. This is your call. I would suggest you make a recommendation to the board, whatever your findings or whatever your concerns are, you make a recommendation to the board, because I don't have a day-to-day operation with, I'm going to sidetrack a second here, because of the fact the same position I have on this issue is what I have with the civil service situation. How can someone do an evaluation if they're not working in close proximity of a person? But to get back to the point of the matter is, I could not make a call on Mr. Fontenot. But the concerns that you expressed to me, it was somewhat, it wasn't surprising, because I've heard some of these comments before. But the question that, and the concerns that I have, even when Miss Daisy was here, the concerns were there, and the issues was never addressed. It was nothing different than what you're saying now. So it makes me wonder whether or not Mr. Fontenot was a tool, perhaps, in a sense, for the lack of a better word. Okay, the same issues that we are having now with Mr. Fontenot was there when Ms. Daisy was there. So it begs the question, why now? But I don't work with the guy. I don't work closely with him. So I have to rely on your recommendation and interpretation of his activities on a day-to-day basis. And I just wanted to just put my 2 cents in there for whatever value that he brings to the conversation. But I'm entrusting that you have an insight and being fair in your observation, and I'm going to relinquish the floor.
Okay, 1 second, let me get you to press your button for the floor. You want to press your button for the mic to?
Say this, that when I first came on board here, September 27th, I observed, I had a lot of work to do. I was going to try to get out some reports to the audit committee. I started working on the Plaquemines Parish mileage and expenses. And during that first month or so, I was observing Mr. Fontenot. And even though, I observed this fact, that he has a very personable personality, gets along with people very well, and he's really a good person. As I observed him, I realized that he had no understanding about this process whatsoever. I spoke to him about that, and I told him during that time that, he needed to get some more education. At that point in time, I signed him up for the Certified Internal Audit Program in hopes that would help. But the thing that concerned me most was his behavior and his lack of professionalism. There was one time when I was talking to him and he appeared just to doze off while I was talking to him. There was other times when he was snoring so loud that it disrupted me and the whole office. There was other times when he, kind of had some issues with, someone on the phone when he was, doing some yelling and screaming. But anyway, that being said, it seems that he got off on a really bad track in the very beginning somehow, and I'm not sure how that happened. But it flowed over to me. And this department, I really have nothing else to say, but the beginning impression that I got of him was that. After that, I gave him an audit to do on the ferries department just to see how much he did know. And then when I got the report back, I realized that my assumption was correct, that he had no idea how to do this work. And this is the kind of work that the parish, in order to get reports out, and I'm thinking of the citizens, and I can tell you, during this period of time with Mr. Fontenot, I have become fond of him. So this is very difficult for me. But for the citizens of the parish, we need to be able to get at least 1, maybe 2 reports out every month. We need to provide you with information, provide the citizens with as much information as they can get, and to do some good work for them. And that being said, I need someone in this position that already has the experience, that can hit the ground running and they can put out reports that I could look over fairly quickly and say, hey, yeah, you send that report to the committee, it's a good report. So that's what I got to say.
Are there any further comments on the item?
Yes. Yeah, and it's going to be my final comment. Mr. Duke, I can appreciate your candor in all of your comments. I can appreciate it, but some of the comments that you made in regards to to Mr. Fontenot, I mean, it's just unacceptable. I mean, I can appreciate your comments. It's just for someone to just fall asleep in the middle of a conversation, or just to be sleeping on a job, is unacceptable at any level. You know, so I can understand your position, and we are trying to elevate this audit department to where it need be, because I'm one of the main council person that's raising the flag and blowing the horn that we need to bring all of our departments up to the level that they should be. And I know there's a lot of deficiency in a lot of the departments, and I can understand and I can appreciate. But again, my comment is, for us to allow this to fester to this level is concerning to me. And that's my comment.
All right, any further comments from anyone? There's a motion on the floor that's been seconded. If there's no further discussion, I'll ask that the machine be open. And the resolution is adopted 3-0. We'll move to item number 3, old business.
A review of the 2018 audit plan. There's a PowerPoint.
Mr. Duke. We can't hear you, Mr. Duke.
Do is review the audit plan that I went over when I first got here in September. I think the last committee meeting, Ms. Savant had some concerns about maybe adding a couple of items, or at least reviewing this plan. So I thought it'd be a good thing to do is to bring this up in a PowerPoint presentation and review it and kind of go through it again like I had done in the very beginning. The Plaquemines Parish Internal Audit Department conducts independent, objective audits and is committed to providing timely, useful, and reliable information. The Audit Department identifies opportunities to improve government operations by conducting comprehensive independent audit and activities to evaluate risk exposures relating to PPG's governance, operations, and information systems. Regarding the achievement of objectives, the reliability, integrity of financial information, effectiveness and efficiency of operations, programs, safeguarding assets, and compliance with laws, regulations, policy, procedures, and contracts. My audit plan always consists of audits and reviews that are identified through an annual planning process. The audit resources are assigned in areas of highest risk and vulnerability. That's what we try to do. The results in providing these recommendations improve internal controls, operations, and systems. The audit department is led by the chief internal auditor with one staff member and an assistant internal auditor. This audit plan is based upon the full utilization of that staffing level. At this point in time, I identified the audit universe to be 855 identifiable auditable units. The calendar year of 2018 audit plan includes 12 proposed audits that were approved by this audit committee in October. To identify high-risk areas for audit coverage, I relied on discussions with PPG management, the audit committee our knowledge, professional judgment, and other information that it could obtain. As with any audit plan, these identified areas will be updated annually as the Internal Audit Department becomes more familiar with the operations of PPG. Also, the audit areas can be expanded depending upon the needs of the audit committee and the needs of the chief internal auditor, and will be evaluated annually as objectives, organizational structure changes. On the next slide, we have risk assessment and business environment. Those items, economic factors, regulatory environment, technological changes, changes in risk management, changes in the internal audit approach, and changes in the risk appetite. These will result in significant changes to the audit universe and the audit priorities. A component of the plan is the audit priorities, which was approved in October. The schedule is designed to be independent and liftable from the audit plan and risk assessment. A risk assessment is a systematic process for assessing and integrating the professional judgments about the probability of the existence of adverse conditions or events that will affect Plaquemines Parish. Based on the risk assessment, the PPG auditor will audit areas and prioritize by securing approval from the audit committee. Any changes to the audit plan has to be approved by the audit committee. The schedule of priorities is not necessarily limited to 1 year. In fact, it is expected that the current priority schedule will overlap years. In addition, because conditions change, audit priorities determined through risk assessment process may be reviewed and updated throughout the year. The 2018 priority list is on the next slide. Civil service audit has been completed. I plan on sending that out tomorrow, on Friday. I got the comments from Ms. Barrios yesterday. I looked them over. I sent her another draft. We had some differences. Sent her another draft. She sent it back to me this morning. I looked them over. Even though we have some disagreements, the audit report stands the way it is, and I will send it out tomorrow. The port audit is in progress. We're working very hard to get that report on traveling mileage out this month. Ferries audit has been completed. Purchasing disbursements, contracts, overtime, boat harbors, community action agency, ambulances, fixed assets, disaster preparedness, community programs are the others on this list. If there is any changes that the audit committee would like to make to this plan, I would suggest that we discuss it. I do think the water department should be added. Based on my review of the audit department, the billing seems to be an issue, a big issue, the billing. So that's where I will focus all of the work, is on the billing issues of the water department. And if there's any others, I do think that we could take a look at grants. I think Ms. Savant had mentioned something about that the last meeting. You know, that would be a good one to put on as well. As I said in the previous statement, this plan can be changed as we go along, as we become more familiar with the operations of Plaquemines. And we'll get to this down the road as the hotline becomes available and we have some more information. This plan may change. But let me say this, there will be no audit that I will ever attempt, or no consulting work that I'll ever attempt without having approval from the audit committee. No matter who comes to my office and tries to get me to do work, that is not the way this is done. And another thing too, when I send out comments to management, it has been my expectations and my experience in the past that I get a response from management. Either they will email me or they'll call me up and they'll say, Randy, I've received your audit, I'm looking over it, and you'll get my comments within a certain period of time. I have not had that kind of communication since I started here with Plaquemines. I've had justices at the Supreme Court call me up right away when I send them a report. I've had Mr. Young call me up when he received a report right away and wanting to discuss this. I've not had that cooperation here whatsoever. It's not a hard thing to do when I send out a report, just to, give the auditor a call and say, hey, look, I'm reviewing it. I've got other things to do. I may not get back to you in a week or so. That's fine with me. I have no problem with that. It's just a communication back and forth that I need, and I need that. In order to put out a good report, an accurate report, you need the back and forth with the auditee. I have finished the civil service audit. I met with Ms. Barrios for 3 hours last Friday. However, she didn't get back to me for about 3 weeks. She didn't communicate with me until, about 3 weeks later. I continually have to send out, what's the status. However, Ms. Barrios, when she did contact me, was very, very helpful. She was helpful. And when we did meet, she spent 3.5 hours with me discussing my report. I have never had anyone do that yet, except for her. Now, the only person that I've had has emailed me or commented to me or tried to work with me on these audits was the Ferries Department, Mr. Horton. He did work with me. He called me up. He wanted to get the report accurate. He wanted to meet. It was, and he that report went out pretty good because of him. Civil service audit, even though we have some differences between each other, this report's going to go out really good. The first draft I sent to the audit committee was not a good draft report. It was not up to my standards, but I felt I needed to get it out, to put some pressure on maybe management, saying, hey, look, he's going to get the report out whether we have comments or not. So, that being said, she did contact me, and we had some good discussions, and, it's going to make that civil service audit report much, much better for the audit committee. And I'm not going to send out a report to the audit committee unless I feel that it's up to the audit committee's standards. I'm just not going to do it. And unless I get comments from the auditee, sometimes it's difficult to understand. Maybe I have a misunderstanding about something I'm looking at, and I don't want a report going out with a misunderstanding because it's an inaccurate report. And so I've always pressed the auditee, wherever I've worked, to get with me to discuss it, and they've always wanted to do this because they don't want a report going out on their department that's inaccurate either. So I don't understand why we don't have this communication process going between me and management. But it's out there. There is communication issue. The COSO framework that I spoke about, I think, on the first audit with the Plaquemines mileage and expenses. One of the main things with COSO, the Committee for Sponsoring Organizations that created a framework for internal auditing, that one of the main things is communication. If you don't have communication, most organizations fall apart. They just can't function. So, that being said, I would hope as we go along with this process that I could get more cooperation and communication. I don't require a whole lot. All I require is an email. Randy, I got your report. I'm looking over it, and I'll get to it. And then maybe a couple of, I'll ask for a status report down the road, and they'll say, hey, look, Randy, I've been really busy. I'm doing this, but I'm on it. I'm going to get back to you. Being said.
Any follow-up comments to Mr. Duke's comments? I have a couple, but I'll yield to you. You ready?
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Duke. I'm hearing all of the favorable comments that you're having of Ms. Barrios, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not impressed with our performance at all, and this is not to sway you in any way, form, or fashion. Because when I was reading the draft audit what we received, I had some concerns with the terminology, words efficient in areas and all, and we are struggling as a council as a result of actions that Mrs. Barrios has taken. So I'm not impressed with our performance at all. But, because I think that's one issue that's real concerning to me in the Civil Service Department is the evaluating of a subordinate. I think it's been decided that because of the family ties that they're calling in someone outside, a commissioner to do the evaluation of this young lady. And my question, as I said earlier, where I couldn't make a strong determination on Mr. Fontenot's day-to-day activities, I'm having the hardest time to understand how could someone that does not see the day-to-day operation of a person in their work area, how could they evaluate that person? And a lot of times, this because this is interpreted as it turns into a dollar figure because there's evaluations, high evaluations given, and this person benefit from these actions, and I'm having issues with that. And and whereas the entire workforce does not have that same opportunity. If you don't have a pretty good relationship with your boss or your superior, your paycheck can suffer. So I'm having issues with that. And when I see the words thrown around, efficient here, efficient there, it was very concerning to me. That's it, Benny.
Yeah, I have to agree about the evaluation process and a board member evaluating an employee that doesn't supervise the employee. I don't really understand how, and I got to agree with Ms. Salvant on that issue, that you can't have a remote evaluator that does not have a hands-on experience to know what they're evaluating. So it is an issue for me as well on how that works out. Having said that, I don't know what the answer is, but Mr. Juneau, you have a comment?
I agree with both of y'all. I don't see how someone can evaluate that's not around them all the time. It's kind of hard for me to understand that, but it's got to be looked at, and I appreciate you looking at it. It has to be looked at.
Mr. Duke, hold on a second. Hold on. Press your button, please. Press your button, please. Press your button. Hold on. You're on.
Is it on?
You're on.
Yes, I will put the civil service out tomorrow with her comments. And look forward to discussing that with the committee, the whole audit report with the committee during the next committee meeting. I don't feel good enough to discuss this audit at this point in time, not having it in front of me, but we can look at it in depth, and I look forward to having the committee's opinion on everything concerning this civil service audit.
All right. While we're on this subject, we have a couple of issues that have raised up in this discussion. One of them is that do we want to amend the audit plan? And the second issue is the time frame on responses from management as to a limitation of that time frame, because if we allow management to drive our schedule, then our schedule will slip continuously and we will not be productive as an audit committee. So at this time, I know that there are two items that I would like to see added to the proposed audit plan. One of them is the water department and the contracts department. And I know that we have mentioned that in the past, so.
I think I have the contracts, Mr. Roussel, on there already. I have contracts as number 5 on the plan.
No, but I'm talking about grants. That's what I said, grants.
Oh, grants.
I meant grants.
Okay, grants.
Excuse the slip. Yeah. So I would say the water department, collection, billing and collections that we should add to the list and audit that, as well as schedule a grants department audit as well to be inserted into the plan.
Yep.
So at this time, I'd like to make an amendment to the audit plan for 20. Go ahead.
Are we gonna address these as they listed, or?
Well, we can insert them wherever you'd like. I believe that currently, because of the water department completely billing issue has really raised itself to a level that needs immediate attention, we need to insert the water department between ferries and purchasing at this time, and we could put the grants department right behind it. Yes. So that will bump the rest of them down, so they become 4 and 5, and the other audits bump down.
Okay, so the way I see it now is this. It's not on the screen. I have grants as number 5. Or let's see, no, water department number 4, grants number 5. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
At this time, I'd like to make an amendment to the 2018 proposed audit plan to insert the water department billing section as number 4 and the grants department section number 5. And the rest of the items will bump down 2 numbers to the appropriate number. So we will wind up having 14 on this list at the end of the day. So I'll make the motion and ask for a second.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Salvo. Is there any comments or discussion? The water department really has risen to a level that needs attention. So if there's no further discussion on the amendment to the 2018 audit plan, I'll ask the machine be open for a vote. It's open. And let the resolution amending the 2018 audit plan adopted unanimously 3-0, and the plan is adopted. We can move on to the next item, C, internal audit hotline. What? 1 second. You need it. There we go.
I've been in touch over the past 3 months with their telecommunications without a whole lot of success and communication from that department. I believe the last communication I had with Mr. Rand over at telecommunication, he said he was working on it. I've been trying to email him and contact him over the past month or more than that without any response from those folks. So I'm not sure how to get them on the ball with this, except just keep trying to talk to them. But Mr. Rand, when I spoke to him on the phone, he sounded very enthusiastic about it and like it was something that he was going to get on right away, and I was going to have it at least a month later, but it hasn't materialized.
I would imagine, and have you sent an email to the parish president and the director?
No, I have not done that. So.
I would recommend that you raise this to the level of the parish president and the director,
Okay.
Expressing the frustration of not having the internal audit hotline that we have sought for a couple of months now, and see what type of response we have there. And if we still don't have a phone hotline installed by our next audit committee meeting, then we can discuss it and perhaps.
Excuse me, Mr. Russell. That's a very crucial component of the audit department. As we know, the water department audit was brought to our attention by someone outside, or an employee, probably a disgruntled employee, but an employee nevertheless. He came to the audit department and we interviewed him, and that's how we found out about the billing, how I found out about the billing issues and how bad they were at the water department. So that being said, that's the type of information we should be able to get from the hotline.
I think the entire committee supports the internal audit hotline as a means of gathering information and allowing the public as well as employees to participate in reporting things that they think should be looked at and things of concern. So I think it's a benefit to the public to have it, and we will pursue it.
Mr. Russo. Yes, I have one question. How discreet will that hotline be? You know, will it be a strict confidence? It comes to you, it remains there, it only would be relinquished, discussed?
Wait. Let him respond on the camera.
Okay.
Wait, Mr. Duke, let her finish, and then I'm gonna put you on.
You know,
Push the button.
I would like to know if this is going to be how the discretionary level of this hotline. Information will, if I'm appreciating it right, information will come in through this hotline to your office. It will be carried, taken in confidence in your department, and would only be shared with the audit committee, right?
Yes, ma'am. I apologize for that. I'm just excited about the hotline.
Or maybe you give me your interpretation.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, that's what's going to happen. It's going to be very confidential. This information will be extremely confidential. I don't think, though, that I should discuss it in an open meeting with the committee. It should be in executive session, I would think.
Okay.
You're talking about the results from
Yeah, who is giving me the tip?
And I think it's important that the confidentiality of the caller be kept and does not be disclosed to anyone. And, you know, I think that that's the only way that the hotline will work is if a person feels confident. Of course, when they call, they may not give you their name anyway. But the point is that it'll be an avenue for someone to be able to report something that they think is of concern. And I share Ms. Alvon's concern that we want people to have confidence that when they call in, that it will be definitely a confidential, anonymous report.
Absolutely, because I think a lot of information could begin by being strictly confidential, you know, because we have a tendency here in the government that a lot of folks don't be forthcoming because of repercussions. So I would support that also.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further comments or discussion on the item C? Hearing none, we'll move to item D.
Yeah, as I said earlier, that audit is in progress and should be out this month, I would think, hopefully.
Okay.
Item
Any
number,
comments on item D?
yeah.
None, we'll move to item E.
Item E is a work in progress as well. I have received the contracts and the CEA from the port. I'm looking over that information as we speak. So hopefully get that out as soon as possible as well. I know that's a very serious area that I should spend a lot of time looking at.
Any questions on item E? None? We'll move to item 4, new business.
Review of the 2018 budget.
Okay, on item number A, the review of the 2018 budget, normally what I do, I review the budget for every single audit that I do. If you look at my audit reports, it shows a chart on their budget, which shows that I review that budget very thoroughly. I also review the expenses. I take a look at any revenues associated with that entity. Now, that being said, there's really not enough expenses at this point in time for me to do a thorough review of the entire budget area. So what I'd like to do is wait another month or so, or at least until June, when we have at least a half a year expenses going through that report. And I think I'll be able to do a lot better job for the audit committee at that point in time. However, though, keep in mind, every audit that I do a thorough review of their budgets. Civil service, ferries, the port. If I have access to the port's budget, and I think I do.
Okay. Any further comments on item 4A? None, we'll move to item 4B.
Review of the internal audit website.
Okay. Could we bring this up on the screen? It doesn't look like it's coming up. There we go. Now, this is the website, very good website, I think, that Mr. Jelpe helped me build for the audit committee. If you take a look at the Plaquemines Parish Government page, if you go to the section under Government and click under Internal Audit, you will see what we've put together. It starts off with the internal department overview. And basically, I have discussed that, I think, with the audit committee previously. Then the purpose of the Office of Internal Auditor is stated. If you click on the, for more information on the overview, you come up with the internal, a more extensive explanation of the internal department overview. You know, the Office of Internal Audit profile, you know, is there. The purpose of the Office of Internal Auditing, I have that. The authority, where I get my authority. You know, I report directly to the audit committee. The independence of the Office of Internal Audit is explained. Now, you know, the citizens of Plaquemines can go to this website and get a little bit more of an understanding how this office works. The audit scope, our professional standards, the planning process, as well as the reporting process. Also, I have put on the internal audit standards. If I click on that, you'll see the standards that the internal audit department goes by. You know, and these standards are pretty comprehensive. If we go down, we have the purpose, authority, and responsibility of the department. It has interpretations of each area. You have guidance. It talks about the internal audit charter, independence, objectivity, goes through organizational independence as well. Interaction with the board. This would be interaction with the audit committee. The chief auditor, his role, which goes beyond internal auditing. You know, this is the standards that I go by. When I put in my reports that I'm in compliance with the Red Book, I'm in compliance with the standards, this is what I mean. This is what I'm going by. And if you take a look at under reports, all the reports that I put out so far are there. If you click on the first one, we have for the citizens of the parish, or for anybody that wants to access this, you know, they're going to see my first report put out in November, you know, and it's the whole report, you know, and they can take a look at what the internal audit department is doing. This is the final product of the internal audit department. It looks like there's maybe just a little bit of work here to most people, but it takes a lot of work to put these reports together. And the next one, you know, is the Ferries Department, and hopefully tomorrow we'll have the Civil Service Department on there as well. And when I put the Civil Service Department out to the Audit Committee tomorrow, I would appreciate some feedback right away. And maybe if you all would like to meet with me, sit down, meet with me, and go over it, you know, in each one of your office, I think that would be very helpful to me as well.
Okay.
So that takes care of that part of it. And there again, I really commend Mr. Jelpy for helping me put this together. He's very knowledgeable in this area.
Yeah, we want to thank Mr. Jalpi for his assistance, and if there's no other comments on item B,
Yes, I just want to say how impressive, this is very impressive.
Thank you, Mayor.
I also,
you want to push your button again? Okay.
not only being impressed with your presentation just now, I think my colleagues is worthy of being commented on, and letting them know that I think that they're doing an excellent job. As a whole, this committee, in my opinion, I think this committee has brought the audit department to places where it's never been. And I think if we would have had something of this sort in place, we would have saved this parish a bunch of money and would have avoided many lawsuits and all. And I'm very impressed with your performance as in leadership in that department.
Any other comments? No, I concur with Ms. Salvin. I think that the audit committee and the department has moved light years ahead of where it's been in the past, and I appreciate your effort. And those employees, such as Mr. Jelpy, who have helped to help us move along, I appreciate them, as well as the council secretaries who work with us on a daily basis. Okay. Any further items on audit website? If not, we'll move to C.
Review of the internal audit software.
What?
Purchase for the audit committee that's going to help streamline the audit process. Everything is going to be paperless. We're going to put everything, on the software. We're going to get rid of these binders as much as possible that I'm using to store the information. And so this is going to be it's going to streamline the process all the way from the planning of the audit all the way through writing the report. And everything is going to be on that. If any one of you wants to go to that database and pull up an audit report for 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road, all you're going to have to do is a search and it will come up for you. So you're going to have a bunch of information at your disposal with this management database.
I applaud the department for moving to a paperless effort, and allowing the public to be able to access this information is light years ahead of where we've been. So thank you for that. Any comments on, and this software that we just purchased will do all of this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any further comments on item C? Hearing none, we'll move to item 5.
Approval of the minutes from the February 8th, 2018 meeting.
Is there a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Councilman Juneau moves.
I second.
Councilman Salvin seconds. Any comments or discussion on the adoption of the minutes of February 8th, 2018 meeting? Hearing none, machine is open. And the minutes are adopted 3-0 unanimously. Having no further business on our agenda today and no further business to come before us, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Councilman Salvin moves to adjourn. Councilman Juneau seconds. Machine is open on the adjournment. Ms. Salvin, you want to, yeah.
You gotta redo it, I think.
Yeah, machine is open.
Sorry about that, Kim.
And the meeting is adjourned at 10:23 a.m. Thank you all for coming and participation in the meeting.